What's up, dragons? I am back to do the second half of my December reading wrap-up, which I'm really excited for. I will admit, the last 2 weeks of the month, I pretty much just read books. Like, was really what I did. I was really tired. It was a very stressful month, but reading and relaxing was super fun. So, let's go over the stats, if I can remember, which is why I'm so happy for Covers with Cassidy, her spreadsheet. I will try to link her below. So this will be the second half. I have a first half of the month, but overall I read 20 things. Overall I read 7,306 pages. My average page count of the day was 235, which is pretty accurate, especially for the last half of the month. My average page count is 365, which is significantly higher than normal. But I did have quite a few chunky books on here. My most read genre is romance, and I read 2 books with rep and 14 from authors I've read before. I did catch up on a lot of sequels this month, so that was probably why. I had 4 5 stars, 10 4 stars, 4 3 stars, and 2 2 stars. So I did have some not that amazing books towards the end of the month. For an average rating of 3.8, I read 16 new releases, 3 backlists, and 0 from last year. I read 5 physical, 10 audiobooks, 5 mixed media. That is when I was kind of trying to decipher how I was going to read my romantasy. I still haven't figured it out quite yet. I started 3 series, I continued in 8, I completed 4, I caught up in 4, I read 5 standalones and 2 companions. I read 1 ARC, 7 from Audible, 0 from KU, 1 from the library, 0 from NetGalley, and then 2 from Everand. And I read 1 YA contemporary, 1 contemporary, 5 romance, 3 YA fantasy, 5 fantasy romance, 1 fantasy, and 4 mystery. So yeah, that is all of my stats. And now let's get into the books. So the first book that I finished for this part of it, please, was Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. And I gave this book 4 stars. I really liked it. I sometimes struggle with like closed door stories where like the only 2 people in the whole book are the 2 main characters, like the 2 love interests, because the book seems very small to me. But I will say this book I did like I did enjoy it. I thought the characters were interesting. It's very much a game-based story. Basically, this character is kind of going through the bounds of hell to try to get a reward. And it was fun. It was very quick, very steamy. I had read something about this author before, her YA series, but I had a fun time with it. It is definitely more like 2 characters. Like, I feel like the world building was definitely less pronounced in the story, and it was definitely more of a romance than like a fantasy romance, but I had a fun time with it. I'm excited to read the sequel, which follows the sister, and I gave this book 4 stars. The next book that I read was The Christmas Tree Farm by Laurie Gilmore. I will touch a photo here. And I gave this book 4 stars. I really do like these books. I will say there is not enough connection between all the books in the series. Like, you don't really see the characters again, and even when you do, I don't think that they stand out off the page. But I like this. It was like a reverse Grump Sunshine. It was like a Christmas tree farm. There was a lot of self-discovery in it. A lot of Christmas vibes as well, and I had a fun time with it. Her writing is very bingeable and very readable, which I really do look for. So this was really fun, and I gave it 4 stars. And again, that was an audiobook that I listened thanks to Audible. And then the next book that I read was Booked for the Weekend, which is an Audible original by Liv Maverick. I'll touch a photo here. This is a really quick audiobook. It's like an Audible original, and I always like those because they do really fun things with like the Audible. Like with the audio, it just like it has like a lot of elements to it. But basically you follow a main character that works in publishing, and she is kind of sent to her like her client's house to see how the book's coming along, but she encounters the writer's nephew because she's like a prolific cozy mystery writer, and the grandmother's not there. I'll say that. And they have to kind of work together to put the book ready for market, and I'll say that. But it's very quick, and it was a fun read. Definitely a lot of like snowy vibes and Christmas vibes, and a little bit of grief. I will say that. But I gave it fun. It was fun. I gave it like 3.5 stars, rounded up to 4, but it was a very quick listen. And the next book that I read, this is where I started my sequel game. This is like where everything I read was a sequel pretty much, was Second Son by Adrienne Tooley. This is the second book in the third daughter duology. I'm not going to talk about this one too much because it is a direct sequel, but I had a fun time with it and I gave it 4 stars. I think that this book was very, very different from book 1, and this book had a lot more court intrigue, political stuff. And I had a fun time with it. It does have a sapphic relationship at the heart of it, and it's a very, very quick read, and I gave this book 4 stars. And the next book was another sequel that I read. It's another Christmas story or Christmas novel. It's called I'll Be Home for Christmas by Jacqueline Frost. I will touch a photo here. And this is definitely one that I think is probably wrapping up this series. But she could also be prepping herself to write like something else. But this is like it's called the Christmas Tree Farm series. They're all companions. This one had a murder that was connected to a cookie dough batter. And it was fun. I just felt like at the end you could kind of see that she was kind of wrapping the series up for good. But she also left it. There was like not a lot of opportunities to like do spin-offs. But I had a fun time with it. Christmas vibes were fun. It was a fun, easy listen when I was crafting over the holidays. So it was a fun one and I gave it 4 stars. And then the next book that I read was another novella, or another series of novellas, and it was Walking in a Witchy Wonderland by Juliet Cross. I will touch a photo here. So this was the next novel that I had to read in the Stay a Spell series by Juliet Cross. It's called Walking in a Witchy Wonderland. I think that there's like 5 short stories in this. You kind of get 3 from the previous couples, 1 from a future couple, and 1 like total like side story. But I had a fun time with it. I thought it was quick, very, very steamy, very, very hot. Definitely like an elevated steam level in these. And I find them they're fun reads. Like I will probably wrap up this series like soon because they're just quick and they're fun. Very, very steamy, but I felt like I should read it before I continued on. And it was perfect because it was the holidays and it was a quick audiobook. So that's why I picked this one up. And the next physical book that I actually read this half and half. I read the first half physically, like on my Kindle, and then the second half did the Audible, is Quicksilver by Kelly Hart. Everyone and their mother has been talking about this book. It is on so many best of the year lists, and I'm happy that I actually read it. It's going to make my video plans a little bit easier. But I really like this book. I gave it 5 stars. I will say it is a very, very slow start. You basically follow a character named Cerise, and she is really good at keeping secrets, but she winds up stealing something that she shouldn't be stealing, and she winds up getting taken to the king or the queen, and then she winds up getting taken to a fae realm. And that's all I'm going to say. It is a very, very steamy friendship or relationship. It's slow burn though. This is a lot of like world building. Like this book that I read was a very, very insular story that really, really focused on a relationship. This definitely expanded so you had a complete world, which I really, really liked. I gave this one 5 stars, and I just really liked the world. I really liked all the side characters, so I'm really excited to see what Kelly Hart does next, like when the next book comes out, because I'm definitely going to read it. There were some bombshells dropped at the end, and for a fantasy romance girly, I would say this was a solid start. This is the book that I think clarified to me that I should probably listen to Fanro, a lot of it, but maybe read like the first 100 pages just so I can understand the world. But I had a really fun time with this book, and this book is almost like 600 pages, so it's a chunky boy, but I still read it, so it's pretty good. And then on New Year's Eve, or on Christmas Eve, I think, I read Spectacular by Stephanie Garber. This is a holiday Christmas novella, and I gave it 3 stars. It is really, really quick. Next year, if you want to read something that's so fast, has pictures, set in the world. I would say this is more of Donatella's story, but you do see Scarlet and Julian, I think, as well. But it's definitely a Donatella and Legend story, and I had a fun time with it, and I gave it 3 stars. And the next book that I read is after Christmas. So I read Finley Donovan Rolls the Dice. I'll attach a photo here. This is the 4th book in the Finley Donovan series. I will say this. This book got 3 stars. I liked it. I had an enjoyable time with it. But I don't think these characters are for me. These characters are super unlikable. Like, so unlikable. And that really hinders my enjoyment, to be very, very honest and very, very frank. Like, I think it's a fun time. It's a fun, goofy time, but I don't like the characters, and that really does detract, like, takes away from my enjoyment. This one was all set in, like, Atlantic City. We had some characters. We had, you know, a mystery. But as these books go on, the characters get more and more unlikable. So this book only got, like, a 3.5 star. I will probably keep reading them because they're quick. They're palate cleansers, but they're definitely not my favorite mystery series. And the next book I read that my friend Tiffany got me is The Wedding Witch by Erin Sterling. Unfortunately, I only gave this book 2 stars. I feel like the X-Hex and the Kiss Curse were far superior. This followed Bronwyn Penhallowen, who's the 3rd brother in that series, and this book just had too much happening, and I feel like nothing about this story really connected to me. So I only gave it 2 stars, and I would not recommend this book. I do recommend the other 2, but this book I felt nothing. Like, it was a lot happening, and I don't think it really, like, clicked. I still don't get why it's called The Wedding Witch. So, I don't know. I only give this one 2 stars. And the next book I read was Games Untold by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I gave this short story collection 5 stars. I had such a fabulous time with this, and I just loved all the stories. I don't really ever read short story collections, but this one works so well, and I think if you are an Inheritance Game fan, you need to read, especially need to read The Night in Prague, Same Backwards and Forwards, and then Pain at the Right Gun, because those stories really are quite imperative to the whole story. But I do think those stories are really, really required reading if you were going to keep going and reading this set, like, her more books, because they do contain a lot of plot information, and I think you would be a little bit confused if you went on and didn't have that. But I had a great time, and I gave this book 5 stars. So there's that. And then I read another sequel. I read The Sinister Revenge, which is book 8, I think, in the Veronica Speedwell series. I will touch a photo here. This is, I really like these books. This book had a very different dynamic between Stoker and Veronica. They were kind of in a bit of a lover's quarrel throughout this. Also, this case involves Stoker's brother. I don't want to say too much because it is so far in the series. They are pretty standalone books, but you do need to read them in over because there is a pretty big overarching plot. But I had a fun time and gave it 4 stars. And the next book I read was Grave Expectations by Alice Bell. I only gave this book 3 stars, and I think my hindrance was just reading it physically when I should have listened to it. But I had an okay time with it. I just didn't love it as much as I was hoping. That is why it only got 4 stars. But I do want to read book 2 and see if, you know, reading it will, like, listen to it will help. But just so you know, this book is about 2 main characters. They are seancers. They run seances. One is alive and one is a ghost, and they kind of team up together to do these seances. And a friend of theirs from college has asked them to do one at their house. They do it, but little do they know there was a murder a year ago, and a death happens at the start of the books, and they are asked by the person that dies to kind of uncover what happened a year ago. And they team up with some of the younger members of the family to kind of figure out what's happening. And it was okay. It didn't hit the right, like, I felt like I was just reading something that wasn't that interesting, but I did give it 3 stars, and I am interested enough in the sequel. And the last book I officially finished in 2023 is The Undermining of Twilight and Frank by Megan Bannon. I gave this book 4 stars. I definitely will say the first book in this series I liked a little bit more. That's why that one got a 5 star, and I kept hoping. I was like, oh god, if I don't like this, like, this might be a 5-star book. It was not going to be in my top books of the year, but I did like it. I think this is more like a romantic comedy. The tension and plot I felt wasn't as strong in this book, and I always say with cozy fantasy, if you're going to give me cozy fantasy, then please give me a book that has a clear plot. And I think that this was the hindrance. So basically, you start this book off, these 2 characters, they are a bit older, they have always been friends, and they find a baby dragon, and then they're kind of uncovering a mystery that happens when their co-workers dies by mysterious circumstances, and they're kind of trying to figure out why are there suddenly dragons here. I liked it. It wasn't a new favorite, but I definitely do want to keep reading this series because it's really, really fun. So yeah, let me know in the comments what was your favorite book of December. I definitely have to say one of my favorites was definitely Quicksilver by Callie Hart, but I would love to hear yours below, and I will talk to you guys soon for another video.